Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to review today's Prime Minister's questions as Boris Johnson continued to try and press the emergency culture wars button to get out of having to explain why he is neither adopting the plans of the opposition to deal with the cost of living crisis, nor carrying out any action of his own. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So the Conservatives are currently trying to talk up the lowest unemployment figures since the 1970s. Great. However, the government control how unemployment is defined, so the figures are fiddled. It would be better if the government was made to use a proportionate figure of how much of the available workforce have incomes above a certain level which can be independently determined to meet the basic cost of living. But that would be too objective, wouldn't it? All of a sudden, having people working more than full-time hours but still in need of extra help to pay the bills would look bad. People on 0 hours contracts, they wouldn't count. But figures that they find harder to fiddle are inflation and tax rate. We have the highest inflation rate for 40 years. We have the highest tax burden for 70. The government are doing little about the rising cost of living, but are acting to reduce the incomes of ordinary workers. And this is double trouble for Johnson and the Conservatives, politically speaking, because there's now nothing that the opposition need query other than this. Johnson's criminality over Partygate has run its course. In terms of parliamentary pressure, Johnson is facing 3 separate investigations. No more can be achieved now. The political issue is the cost of living and can remain the cost of living until there's another massive scandal. And every time an opposition leader such as Keir Starmer or Ian Blackford presses Johnson on this, there will be no deflections that hit home. Didn't stop Johnson trying though. So Starmer pushed his plan for a windfall tax to ease the energy costs for millions. Johnson tried to distract from the question by bringing up trans issues. Not working though. Even if the Conservatives think it's a vulnerability for Labour, and I honestly don't understand how they think it can be, it's not a key issue for target voters of either party. Doesn't matter how well Labour respond to it or how poorly they respond to it. Doesn't matter politically. Even if Johnson could land blows, gains him nothing. But trying to use it now just makes him look even more callous. Like you can imagine, think about the average person watching PMQs. Maybe they don't watch it very often. They're now watching. This is important. Politics is now important to them. So they're watching this exchange, or maybe they're reading about it later. And they're struggling to make ends meet. Starmer proposes a partial solution. But Johnson starts talking about what a woman is. Those people sat at home wondering whether they can eat today or tomorrow. They don't care about that. Then Starmer poked at Johnson's dithering. Just before the local elections, the government said they were thinking about this windfall tax. Surprise, surprise, they stopped thinking about it once the polls closed. But then the front page of the Telegraph today say Tory MPs are warming to the idea, but they voted against it yesterday. Starmer pointed out that Johnson was for it, then against it, and then for it, and then against it. He asked when he would stop the hokey-cokey and back a windfall tax. And this is one of those situations. Johnson just keeps engineering for himself and his MPs. It's exactly the same issue as when he tried to starve hungry kids in 2020 or get Owen Paterson off by disbanding the Standards Committee in 2021. Johnson's supporters try to claim that he's got the finger on the pulse of the concerns of ordinary voters. He makes this connection with ordinary voters. No, he doesn't. He never has. He hasn't a clue. I've never seen a Prime Minister with such a poor grasp of the way the political wind is blowing. After forcing his MPs to adopt deeply unpopular positions numerous times, only to U-turn later, it should be obvious to them Boris Johnson has no political acumen and no backbone. He's now trapped. If he eventually backs the windfall tax, even if it's half-hearted, he's just doing what opposition parties said he should have done months ago. If that is not an advertisement for a change of government, I do not know what is. People will see. With a Labour government, they'll get the right decisions and they'll get them more quickly and decisively. But let's say Johnson holds firm. That seems to be his plan right now. Hold firm. He has to come up with another plan. He can actually try and make the argument that Labour's plan won't work or that there are better options. Absolutely. But to do that, he needs to say what those better options are. And because he is the government, enact them. He's not. So right now, standing firm means allowing people to struggle unnecessarily and be seen to do so. Starmer said that for every day of Johnson's dithering, British households are hit by an extra £53 million on their energy bills a day. But the oil companies and gas giants are making £32 million in unexpected profits. Johnson replied that he's spending £22 billion on helping people. But here's the thing. Impressive sounding sums of money sometimes work. I've talked about them in the past. When you break them down, you really analyse them, you realise it's not actually that much. But it sounds impressive. I mean, 22 billion, that's a lot of money. I'd like that. But it only works when a small minority are in need of it. This crisis is so bad that your average voter is struggling. It's all very well banging on about this fund and that spending. If those voters don't see the benefit themselves, what are they to conclude? That the government are helping other people but not them? Well, how come I can't see the benefit of this 22 billion then? It's not a great way to win their vote. Starmer finished off with the example of someone who has to run dialysis at home. In fact, there are a great many people who need a significant amount of energy just to operate machineries to get by, for medical reasons. So as well as dialysis, there are people who, for example, can't regulate their own body temperature too well. And then need extra heating compared with the rest of us. But the people who need extra energy, there's extra energy demands for medical reasons. So many people. And this is needs, energy needs that are above those of the rest of us. And a disproportionate number of these people lack the income to easily afford it. So in the example given by Starmer, he said they had to turn off their central heating, but their energy bill has still doubled. He said he feels like he's been priced out of existence. Now, that for me was a very powerful line. Priced out of existence. How awful. And it was so powerful that it shut the Conservative benches up. They knew that this was not the time to be braying like enraged donkeys. Johnson at least learned from his Susanna Reid interview disaster when he dismissed the old lady riding the bus all day to keep warm. He asked Starmer if he could have the details of this person in order to personally intervene. But then he just went on about the Queen visiting the Crossrail project. He then tried to take credit for it by asking, who was the Mayor of London and who was the Prime Minister when it was completed? Referring to himself and David Cameron, of course. That being said, if there'd been a chance to respond, Starmer may have pointed out that the project was actually planned, authorised and budgeted for by the last Labour government under Gordon Brown. It just happened to be completed under Boris Johnson as Mayor of London. But Johnson saved this specifically for the final response, knowing that that wouldn't happen. Like, think about it. What does Crossrail have to do with people with extra medical needs struggling with the cost of energy? Nothing. Not at all. That response had got nothing to do with the question. He planned right from the start. He'd planned to shove that in regardless of the question. And at the end, where there's no correction possible. Then Ian Blackford referred to Johnson's statement that, well, really Rishi Sunak, but by proxy Boris Johnson's statement that intervening in the cost of living crisis now would be silly. He also referenced Lee Anderson, who was the Tory MP, who suggested that people could solve all their budgeting problems with cooking lessons. This is an MP saying you can get a nutritionally balanced meal for 30p, while he gets to claim £25 in expenses for meals. Why don't we limit MPs' expenses to the level they reckon it's possible to manage on? A new MP, when you've got a new MP, ask them a question. How much do you reckon it costs for this then? How much do you reckon it costs for a nutritionally balanced meal, as one example? If they say £25, fine. You can have up to £25, by the way, whatever you think is necessary. Oh, £25. Let someone try and say 30p. Then put that right. You can claim 30p for your meals then, son. Blackford identified the Chancellor as the problem, even in the eyes of Tory MPs, said that the people were briefing against the Chancellor now. And he urged Johnson to replace him. Naturally, Johnson declined the kind offer for advice and said that the spike in energy prices had been exacerbated by the war in Ukraine. I thought, that's interesting. It's true. It is true. It has indeed been exacerbated. But isn't the government lie supposed to be that the problems are entirely down to the war, even though they started before the full-scale invasion? The Prime Minister said that the government would do more, which is nice. Oh, he said he'd do more. He's going to do more. Brilliant. That's all we're asking. That's all Keir Starmer's asked him to do. It's all Ian Blackford's asked him to do. Brilliant. He just failed to mention what more and when. An unintentional slip, I'm sure. Unfortunately, Blackford didn't point it out. He just asked if the Prime Minister still supports Rishi Sunak, to which Johnson responded that he approves of the Chancellor's £22 billion spend to help people. But as with the same response to Starmer's question, spending announcements only work when either people can see the benefit personally or if they don't personally need it. Like when the government promised to spend an impressive sounding but ultimately pathetic amount of money on an issue that affects a minority group, most voters can think the government are helping. Most voters don't know the difference between £5 billion and 5 million in terms of whether it's what's needed. It sounds like a lot either way, doesn't it? They don't know whether it's the right amount or whether it's a substantial amount because they don't critically analyse the sums being announced. And if they aren't personally affected, they don't see that it's not doing anything at all. But this issue is affecting almost everyone. Not actually affecting many Conservative MPs, mind you, but it is affecting a lot of voters. If you say you've spent a lot of money on dealing with the issue and these people still have that issue, they don't think it's been dealt with, do they? It's this simple. The government are going to have to do something or they're going to surrender ground to the opposition. You know, as we enter the second half of the current Parliament on the downward slope to the next election. That Johnson is doing nothing at this time doesn't just speak to the cruelty of the nasty party, but the stupidity as well. When the nasty party were intelligent, they at least made sure that the relatively small number of crucial swing voters didn't personally feel the pain of their policies. Now they're sinking everyone. This was a truly dismal performance from Johnson, not just bereft of leadership to anyone paying close attention, but even to a casual observer. There's no way they could have thought that he sounded like the head of government that we need right now. But those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. I hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. Even click on the join button if you'd be interested in memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.